I chose to do Stephen King for this project. Why King? I chose to look into the impacts King has had on literature because I had heard his name from so many people. Growing up, my parents read his novels, and I often took interest in what they would tell me. As I started reading them myself, I fell in love with the genre as a whole and how he not only looks at monsters but people and ideas as horror. King was the youngest of two sons to his mother, Nellie Ruth Pillsbury King. She was a single mother who worked jobs and helped the family to provide for her kids. In King's autobiography, On Writing, he talks about being sickly and small as a child. He was pulled from school, and yet this is where his journey with writing began. His mother encouraged him to write after he copied one of his comic book stories, telling him to, quote, write one of your own, end quote. Later in life, King found himself often getting into ambitious projects with his brother, one of which was working on a newspaper called Dave's Rag, which his brother David named after himself. He was writing stories for the paper that actually gained a little bit of attention. This is right around the same time his love for science fiction and horror really picked up. King tells a story of how he made printed copies using the printing press for his brother's newspaper, using the plot of a scary movie he saw that weekend and sold at school. Not only did King write for his brother's newspaper, but he often wrote short stories he submitted to magazines, and time again, with little luck of getting published. Along with this, he wrote for his school newspaper for a short while before getting a job as a sports reporter for the local magazine, where King attributes much of his improvements on storytelling to Mr. Gold, his boss at the time. The phrase that stuck with him, quote, write with the door closed, rewrite with the door open, end quote, is how he began telling stories. Stories such as Graveyard Shift are directly based on experiences in his life. As a young adult, King worked in a mill where his coworker described rats as big as cats or dogs, which inspired the story to follow. In other novels, such as It, places from his childhood appear. An old junkyard and railroad to him and his brother may be an integral part of one of his stories later on. Dark romanticism is a genre of literature that places focus on traits frowned upon by society. It is more unsettling because of these aspects we view as awful wrong and is more psychologically terrifying than physically. Edgar Allan Poe is considered the father of dark romanticism. Some examples of these works would be A Telltale Heart or The Mask of Red Death, both of which look at human nature and behavior in terms of horror. This genre is closely related to Gothic literature, which places more focus on horror and supernatural causes. King's novels show elements of both dark romanticism and Gothic works. He has merged the two together to create a deeply unsettling look into human behavior interacting with outside forces, such as monsters or the paranormal. His works offer a viewpoint that is best understood by Americans, as the culture and language he uses are experienced by many in the United States, although anyone can understand the horror King portrays.